Question 92 of Prima Secunda of the Summa is one of those really small questions that only has 2 articles in it, so this is going to be very quick. And I thought I would, before I go into it, tell you a little bit about the history of why I'm doing this channel in the first place. And if you have a couple of minutes at the beginning for me to explain this to you, it all started because I have, for the last 20 years, been working in Catholic radio. And when I first started in Catholic radio in the first 5 years or so, I noticed that so often the apologists on Catholic radio were referring to St. Thomas Aquinas. And it seemed that it was pretty clear that St. Thomas Aquinas was the gold standard for pretty much everything in the Catholic Church. And so I became very curious about him. So one day, about 15 years ago, I went to the Catholic bookstore, I bought the Summa, and I knew that I was just going to read it all the way through. It took me about 9 months, and I enjoyed it so much. I started the very next day reading it again. That time I read it a little bit more slowly, and it took me about a year. And shortly after that, I got the opportunity to teach high school students the Summa Theologia through an organization called Homeschool Connections. And I've been doing that now for 11 years, an online course on the entire Summa Theologia, and enjoy it so much. And so I really can't stop studying and reading and learning more, because I find it's so edifying in learning about my treasured Catholic faith through the mind of St. Thomas Aquinas. And so that's why I do this. And if you are watching this, I appreciate it. I'd love to get your comments and thoughts about what you think so far. I wonder if anybody has watched all of these, because this started a long time ago, and we now are really getting to the end of Prima Secunda, and that's going to put us about halfway through the entire Summa, one question at a time. So this one, as I mentioned, is pretty short. This is the effects of the law, and when we talk about an effect, we mean, what does it do? What is the effect? What impact does the law have? And the first article says whether an effect of law is to make men good. Okay, so what does the law do? Well, it makes men good. We've already really kind of established that it has to do with reason. And that's why we have reason in the first place, that our reason conforms to divine reason. And we've learned about the 4 kinds of law: the eternal, the natural, the divine, and the human, which you really ought to, commit to memory. But so Thomas says a law is nothing else than a dictate of reason in the ruler by whom his subjects are governed. Okay, so there's a good definition of law. Now, the virtue of any subordinate thing consists in its being well subordinated to that by which it is regulated. Okay, so there's a hierarchy. There's something that is ruled by something else, and that thing is under the law of what is higher. Thus, we see that the virtue of the irascible and concupiscible faculties consists in their being obedient to reason. Now, I love this because now he's comparing law in the sense that this question is to the human person, to the laws that rule our very nature. Okay, so this is almost what Plato did in the Republic. Is he compared the perfect society to what goes on in a person. And so Thomas is kind of doing the same thing. And accordingly, the virtue of every subject consists in his being well subjected to his ruler, as the philosopher Aristotle says. But every law aims at being obeyed by those who are subject to it. Okay, so now he's gone from the faculties of the human person, the reason, the concupiscible, the irascible. Now he's going back to law as in a subject being obedient to a law. So interesting little transition there. Consequently, it is evident that the proper effect of law is to lead its subjects to their proper virtue. Now, whenever you see a word like lead, that is going to have to do with final cause, which means there's purpose. There's also teleology. When you're leading somebody to something, it means that there's some specific end. There's something that you're leading them to. This goes back again to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, where the virtuous life is the good life, right? So that's really what he's talking about. This has a lot of Greek philosophical influence here. And since virtue is that which makes its subject good, it follows that the proper effect of law is to make those to whom it is given good, either simply or in some particular respect. Okay, so why do we have laws? to make people good. Okay, why do we have virtue? Virtue is to make us good. So there should be a connection between a law and virtue. That's what Thomas is saying here. All right, for the intention of the lawgiver is fixed on true good. Okay, fixed on true good. Plato had in his realm of forms, the highest of the forms was the good, right? And that basically was God, and all the other forms were subservient to that one form, right? Which is the common good regulated according to divine justice. It follows that the effect of the law is to make men good simply. If, however, the intention of the lawgiver is fixed on that which is not simply good, but useful or pleasurable to himself or in opposition to divine justice, then the law does not make men good simply, but in respect to that particular government. So now there's a lot in this paragraph. He's talking about bad government where it's not the common good, it's not the universal good, the overall good is its aim, but a particular good, like a really bad ruler who just wants himself or to feed his ego or to feed his appetites. That's bad laws. Okay, so those laws, should not be obeyed because they're not for the common good. Let's see. In this way, good is found even in things that are bad of themselves. Thus, a man is called a good robber because he works in a way that is adapted to his end. Okay, which is interesting because he's using that adjective good even to apply to bad things. So I think he just means a good robber is a masterful robber. He's good at what he does, but even though his end is bad. But it's an interesting way of putting things. Article 2, whether the acts of law are suitably assigned. Okay, what are the acts of law? I have this picture here, the Human Rights Act. We have a lot of acts that have to do with law. He says, just as an assertion is a dictate of reason asserting something, so is a law of dictate of reason commanding something. Now, it is proper to reason to lead, there's the word lead again, think final cause, think teleology, from one thing to another. Wherefore, just as in demonstrative sciences, the reason leads us from certain principles, okay, this is deduction, where you have certain principles, and then you deduce that there are laws that can be based on those particular principles, to assent to the conclusion, so it induces us by some means to assent to the precept of the law. Now, the precepts of law are concerned with human acts, in which the law directs, and there are three kinds of human acts. Some acts are good generically, that is, acts of virtue. Okay, so there are some things that are just good in and of themselves, and the law commands all acts of virtue, according to Aristotle. Some acts are evil generically, so that'd be the opposite, they're not good. Acts of vice, and in this respect, the law forbids. Some acts are generically indifferent. Okay, Thomas said at one point in the Summa that like when a man strokes his beard, it's an action, but it doesn't have any moral value. It's not good or bad, right? And in respect of these, the law permits, and all acts that are either not distinctly good or not distinctly bad may be called indifferent. And it is the fear of punishment that law makes use of in order to ensure obedience, in which respect punishment is an effect of the law. So here he says that there can be some compulsion. There can be compulsion in order to kind of force people to do the right thing. And that's what law does, is it forces us in a way to act good and act virtuous for the end and the common good. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you tomorrow as we get into the eternal law more specifically. God bless you.